Hello and welcome. India continues to be a hub of innovation. A lot of that innovation is happening in cities like Bangalore. We all know that. But the kind of innovation and the quality of innovation, of course, keeps changing. Well, in a way, it keeps innovating too. I'm now joined by Krishnakumar Natarajan of Mindtree, who's going to tell us about what's happening in his company and some of the things that he's looking out for in the year ahead. KK, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thanks, Govind. It's really a pleasure to be on your network.
Thank you.
I think at Mindtree, we think it's important for us to constantly keep reinventing yourself because many times in the context of innovation, being a technology company, you think only technology is innovation, but certainly that should encompass beyond technology to how we run the organization, to how do we really engage with customers. So what I'll try and share with you is some experiences on all these three elements. Coming to the core in terms of how do we really sort of innovate things which will make an impact, the first premise has been that anything which we innovate should be in the context of a customer, which is why if you see the two independent things, the customer and what you do internally, we have tried sort of bringing them together. With that intention in mind, about 2 years back, we launched an internal program which we titled 5 by 50. The logic being that can we get 5 ideas which are solving a real problem of a customer and can we then try and build it into a $50 million business. And the approach was really to ask people who are working with customers, because they are the people who really understand the problem and know what can be done about it. Really coming up with ideas, making a business plan, and the company really almost acted like a venture capitalist. In fact, in year one, we got about 32 proposals. We shortlisted 9 of them, and 2 were taken as ideas which could really be funded.
So, what are these 2? Or if you can tell us?
Yeah, out of which 1 dropped out,
okay.
to be honest. I can even tell you what is the one which dropped out. But just to sort of give you a little bit of what are the other changes we made in the organization, we clearly said this has to be mentored by a group which then really is not bothered by the day-to-day business sort of activities. So we created a separate organization under Jani, who's our CTO, to really mentor these organizations. We also said that they must run like a startup, which means really the people who came up with the idea took a compensation cut. They came up with a business plan. They clearly said this is what is the funding you will get. This is what you have to deliver in terms of milestones. And assuming if that becomes valuable, maybe if we either find an external investor willing to take that, or if it gets the founding team will get a significant part of what the value which gets created in. So it certainly involved a certain mindset change of how do people not only think in terms of innovating, but how do they really monetize that idea? Because that's very, very important in terms of innovation to really reach the customer. So like I said, we had in the first year 2 things. One was in the area of trying to build an infrastructure tool, because increasingly this group found that enterprises, as they get into the cloud, they have both the private and the public cloud. And customers clearly weren't willing to put core applications into public cloud, whereas peripheral applications pretty much they would be willing to do. But they needed a common sort of way by which seamlessly they manage between the private and the public cloud. So this group, because they had experience on the cloud, on network and engineering, they came up with this idea of building a tool which will help enterprises seamlessly manage between private and public cloud, including provisioning, security, chargeback, everything an enterprise IT will really sort of look for. I think sort of moving fast forward, they've reached a certain stage. Like any other startup, they did the mistake of trying to first sell to enterprises. They found they couldn't do it. Then they changed their model. What has really worked for them is to really go to people providing data center services and really sell it as a tool to them, which in turn will be a value-added service which the data center provides to their customers. Today, for this specific thing, we are at such a certain stage. Now we have come to a certain stage because they've got the first few customers. We believe it now has to really move out of the Mindtree sort of umbrella, because once they are within Mindtree, they are not bothered about their space, their tea, coffee is taken care of. I think there's a certain sense of protectiveness and comfort which comes in. So we're clearly sort of working on a plan where we'll completely sort of push them out, let them sort of survive at the next stage. Yeah. This is a key experiment which you're doing, because we think ideas to reach a stage where there is a money paying customer who's willing to experiment it, that's a very crucial stage where people require an initial risk free capital. They require the support of the ecosystem in terms of mentoring and sort of telling them, hey, this approach is not working, which is what I would really call active mentoring. Within the thing, you really are actively mentored. But once they reach that stage, if you still continue with a protective sort of umbrella, maybe their ambitions will sort of get scaled.
Right. So you're saying you're innovating in structure as well, as in structure of the
yes,
organization
that's what
itself.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Right. So what's happening on the product side? What new things are cooking in your labs?
See, essentially we are very clear, we don't want to be a product company. But certainly where we think our value comes is in building in platforms or frameworks which form a part of a solution. Now, so the other one which we are excited about, which we think has potential, is really, I think increasingly surveillance is becoming a very key aspect of both citizen or a person security, as well as in public places. I think security is becoming a thing. And clearly I think there's a move there, just like in consumers, there's been a big move towards digital photography. I think surveillance is also moving from analog to digital. Cameras are becoming IP devices. So what we have done is we have built a whole video management platform, which is digital, and we have built analytics on top of it, so that anybody who wants to move from an analog to a digital mode of surveillance clearly can adopt that. And the big advantages is very much software driven, which is really the core of the strengths which I think any Indian technology company brings in. And to that extent, the level of sophistication we are able to bring into the video analytics, or the level of sophistication we are able to bring in terms of what sort of environments we'll monitor. Just to give you, again, we are experimenting on a lot of things there. Like in a refinery, typically the biggest sort of damage which can be caused is by noticing a fire or a thing. So traditional ways by which smoke was detected wasn't as agile enough. So using video surveillance, we've proven that it can be done far more agile. So the impact of that from a catastrophic sort of value which could get destroyed is extremely high. So the important thing is this is purely a platform. So we think that's where we are good at. But there has to be applications which are built on top of it, so it's need to do. So that is really the transition which we're going through, because to some extent, I think what also happens is, like you rightly said, being a technology company, many times we get excited with technology. So we've done it for this, we did it for some companies which operate toll roads, just to understand what is the traffic which goes, because the toll thing.
Any of this in India? No.
See, this toll thing we did in India, but obviously it didn't go anywhere, because I think there's a lot of other factors by which people don't want a tool like this to work, because their toll thing is based in terms of how many 6-axle vehicles go and so on. So sometimes people don't want to exactly have a device which will, without anything, give the right numbers.
Okay. So these are some of the things that you said are sort of happening on the innovation side. But how's things looking for the industry and you the year ahead?
See, clearly what we see is, if we were to look back about 12 months back, the optimism of our customers is certainly better than what it was in calendar year 13. Now, to the extent, I think as we got into calendar year 14, and at this juncture, clearly at least with our top 25-30 customers, we're discussing their plans for next year. Clearly the conversations are far more positive. Probably it's also relating to key segments which we focus on, retail and consumer products being one key segment which we focus on. The number of customers who are wanting to get engaged with their customers using digital channels, using SMAC, I think is substantive. And a lot of customers are specifically targeting discretionary spends to really improve this.
So how ready are companies in India, including let's say companies like Mindtree, to cater to this whole SMAC phenomenon, that's social, mobile, analytics and cloud? Which means really you're talking about a new digital consumer.
Absolutely, a new digital consumer. See, again, I think I'll just talk about Mindtree.
Yeah.
We were little fortunate because we really started really as an internet solutions company. So a lot of the technology elements relating to how do you manage a large transaction intensive internet sort of application is a core capability of the organization. How do you really use the web to engage with customers, consumers, even before digital became a a pull, we did have that capability. So certainly on essential technology elements, I think we've been able to accelerate and build capability. But where clearly we are still work in process is, I think many times we tend to see these as very isolated sort of things. People are focusing in terms of mobile, saying how do I build Android or iOS applications. But clearly from a customer viewpoint, they are really seeing where is it some of this are intersecting and how do I use that intersection to provide a very unique experience to my customer. Like significantly one consumer product company, we built an application on iPad where the end experience was based in terms of some analysis of both what was indicated on the consumer profile in social media sites plus other data which they had, both structured and unstructured. We were able to profile consumers and really present a unique opportunity or a bearing, which is where, so if you really look at that application, it is really at the cross section of social mobility as well as analytics. But
so, and if you add your video component, you're really like the really like the big brother.
Yes,
so
yes.
You're like Mindtree big brother.
Yeah. No, we're trying some interesting things, particularly in the retail space there, because there's actually still something which is work in process there, where particularly in retail stores in terms of footfalls, where do consumers go, and depending on their profile, how do you really encourage them to make a purchase when they actually visit a physical store. So we are sort of connecting that with something called a deal board, where assuming if we are able to accurately profile the customer and say that this is the sort of thing. So as the person walks on the aisle, there's a deal which sort of comes and he's encouraged to, it's a touch screen, kinetic based sort of thing. So the ability to innovate here is substantive. But the fact is, I think it's important to understand where are really the intersections and how does that generate a very different experience to the consumer.
Right. So last question. So what's the most cool app that came out of your labs or your R&D in the last year?
See, I think
or something that you loved.
Okay, the one which I really loved was, again, it's not recent, but it was really at least 2 years away. When, as a part of the Olympics, we really built a whole game which was on the whole theme of the Olympic torch and how it goes across and how based in terms of certain sort of interaction you have with the consumer, they get points and then they can move the torch from place A to place B and who sort of reaches it to London. Where it's an interactive sort of application where it's also an ability to compete with their friends saying, okay, I've reached a farther distance than you. I think it's a very engaging sort of experience for that brand.
Right. So this is a game or a brand?
It's a game built for a specific brand. Yeah.
Okay. So anything that you're looking forward to the next year?
No, there are a number of things which you're doing.
Which I'm sure you can't talk about.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway. Thank you so much for speaking
Thanks,
with us.
Lovely speaking
to you.